So once
Yay.
again, I will say once again, my name is Gary Mitchell, and I am one of the main people trying to make sure this becomes a thing we can do at the convention, which we won't name because we don't want to annoy anybody and ruin our chances. But again, my name is Gary Mitchell. You can find me there, and that's the reason I'm here. And Bill, you just went again, so we'll loop around one more time to you, and we'll just jump to Sarah. Introduce yourself to the internet.
Hi, internet. My name is Sarah Rose. I stage manager, I guess you want to call it. I'm the person that bugs people online mainly, and our lovely group, and just a general theater nerd. Greg, you want to go?
Sure. My name is Greg Bell, and I live in Baltimore, Maryland. I am the founder of Bloody Mayhem Theatrical, which does a lot of different weird stuff, shadow casting, as well as stage productions, as well as some film stuff and random stupid songs that I decided to write on the guitar, stuff like that. But I've also been active in the Baltimore, DC theater scene since the mid 90s. Been on the board of many local theaters here, founding member of some, board member of long running theaters that have been around for 50, 60 years at this point. So.
All right, Christy.
Hi, I'm Christy Chalmers. I'm down here in South Georgia in Columbus. I have been fairly active in the theater scene here with a lot of the smaller theaters, the Human Experience, Family Theater. Lately, before was working with the Liberty Theater, which is a historically Black theater where we had people like Ma Rainey, Cab Calloway perform when they couldn't perform in the main theaters back then. Wow. I've been fairly active with them. I am your typical, if it is on stage, backstage, under the stage, where do I go? What do I do? I will do it. Theater kid. So you can find me anywhere on pretty much any social media site under Salem Stitch. That's what I go by at con. I don't even know how that stuck, but it did.
There we go. And then Bill, once again, the Atlanta Radio Theater Company, which is an institution.
Yes, and should be in one too. Yeah. I won't give the whole thing. If you're watching this on Facebook, go eventually to the YouTube. You can see the long introduction. But the Atlanta Radio Theater Company has been performing at DragonCon ever since the first one. And we've done a lot of other theater performances at other conventions, a lot of the local ones, including going all the way up to Chattanooga, where we've been to LibertyCon for about 8 or 9 years now. So that's for me.
And because they have to make an entrance.
Hello.
Hello.
Please introduce yourself, Ellery.
Never. I'm Ellery. I have been involved with theater, no joke, since I could sing, which I could do before I could speak at like 3 years old. I also, community theater is what got me my start in the area that I work in. I work as a stagehand and an audiovisual technician, and got a lot of my early experience volunteering and working on the fly and getting mentored in community theaters, and now enjoy doing that when I can with community theaters and at conventions, as well as being the idiot who runs around doing tech for DragonCon every year.
That's why you look familiar.
She, like all tech, she is seen, but everybody's like, yes. So, if you are joining us on the YouTube later, please feel free to join our Facebook group. Search for DragonCon Theater and Musical Lovers Unofficial, and join us there. If you're already on the Facebook group, congratulations, you won.
The links will also be in the description.
Yes, please remember to comment, like, and subscribe. Our favorite form of werewolf, the like and subscribe. And the more numbers we can get, the more that we can get pressure to the overlords of, yes, we should be a thing. because Lord knows we can put on a production. So speaking of putting on a production, segue, we are here to discuss the ins and outs, the ups and downs, the lefts and rights, stage lefts and rights of community theater. As we said in the description, not everybody can make it to Broadway, and sometimes you don't need to. And a lot of the most fun you will have will be at your local level of productions. So, Ellery, you already covered the how you got into it.
Sorry.
No, that's good. That's good. So we're going to just go around the horn. We'll start with Greg.
Sure.
How did you get into all this nonsense?
I actually, as a young person, was focused on music. I play a lot of different instruments. I went to college for the tuba and the bass. So that was a tuba. But in 1995, I was dating this girl who was very anxious about auditioning for a play, and she begged me to audition too, and I didn't know what the hell was going on, so I auditioned as a joke, thinking nothing else, I'd be funny, and then they cast me in the play.
You're a male. Of course they're going to cast you.
Well, that's valid. And it was
Sorry.
Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, so they needed like 35 of them or whatever. And so I got into the show, and I had a blast, and I had a lot of fun. And then I did a bunch of other community productions, and then I started to delve into, that was, like I said, the mid-90s. And I started really getting outside my comfort zone because, again, I never studied anything. I never took a dance class, but then they cast me in West Side Story, and I had to learn how to dance and stuff like that. And then I went into directing. I decided I wanted to start telling the story from the director's seat, and I've directed like about a dozen or more shows locally here. Some have even won awards, and just a lot of fun and stuff like that. I guess my first technical stage experience was shadow casting Rocky Horror in Towson, Maryland, when I was very young and a lot skinnier. And I fit those things better. But that's where I met my wife and all of that. And she does theater. Now we have a bunch of kids, and they all do theater in one shape or form or the other. And like I said, we keep doing it. I play bass still. I direct still. I'm on stage still. It's a lot of fun. So that was it.
All right. And then Sarah.
Sorry, all of a sudden I was big.
Yes. That's how it happened to me too.
Anyway, I got into community theater specifically in college. We technically had a drama department, but we really weren't embraced by the college. We were a small community college, and our director, our teacher, professor, we all called him Bill. Anyway, he wrote all these weird social dialogue type plays. And anyway, I got involved with theater specifically that way. Obviously, I did theater and music and stuff like that in high school and stuff like that. But that's where I really got involved in more of the community aspect. I mean, we went out there. We didn't even just perform at the college. We would perform at the Civic Center, which is a big theater, but we played at the Stoner Theater. That's literally the name of the theater.
Wait a minute.
And we did stuff in cornfields. I mean, I'm from Iowa, so of course cornfields and all sorts of stuff. So that's how I got involved.
All right. And why do you keep doing it?
I actually don't have opportunities to do it yet. That's part of the reason I want to do this, is so that I can get more involved. Iowa, unfortunately, does not have a really big theater scene that isn't one big clique. So,
yeah. I'm from New York. It's very similar.
All right. And now, Christy.
Let's see. I started doing ballet at 3 years old.
Hey.
Yeah, can't tell me how. I'm also the clumsiest person you'll ever meet. But started doing that, and then when I was in middle school, I got the chance to audition for a one act that my school was doing, and she was opening it up. It was non-gender specific, and I wound up playing the lead somehow, and then kept doing school plays and everything through high school. Choreographed my first show, assistant directed, assistant choreographed, and then found out about, if anybody's familiar with the Atlanta area, there used to be a group called CAST, which was Columbus Alliance for Summer Theater, in which basically from kindergarten, you had an elementary middle school show, then you had a teen show, and then you had a community show, which if you were like me, I was helping out with the kids show in the teen show, and then usually got pulled in somewhere with the adult show somehow. Got to dance in The King and I. That was probably one of the hardest dancing roles I've ever had. And then when I moved down here for college, couldn't get cast at the college. Long story there. Let's just say that. Very cliquey, as you so astutely put it. Yeah. But found out some of the community theater that was going on around here, started getting more involved with that. And until they were shut down for one reason or another, had been very busy with pretty much every community theater in town, with the exception of the major one, which you have to know somebody or have grown up in their classes to be cast there. So now I just do what I can when I can. And hi, when you're looking for somebody to do anything, yeah, call me.
Absolutely. All right, and rounding out our introduction, sort of, Bill, how did you get involved with that incredible radio voice of yours?
I have a radio voice? No, I don't have one at all. Anyway, I actually have a weird thing. I got the first role I ever auditioned for, lead in the play, and I had never auditioned for anything or been an actor before. That was in third grade. And I got cast in the role of Peter Rabbit, not Peter Pan. And I was significantly taller than everybody else, including the teachers, when in third grade, because I'm 6'4" now, and I was growing very quickly. And what I had discovered was they had this big casting call, and they all had to read the same exact speech from that play. And I was like maybe the 50th person in line. And when I got to it, it's like I knew every single word, and none of these people put any emotion in it. And I went full degree ham, which we all have done at least once in performance. and I got the part. And then my mother had to make the costume, and I'm already taller than everybody else. And all the other rabbits have these floppy ears. My mother used coat hangers, wire coat hangers, things, and my ears were very erect and very tall. So I was about 5 feet above all the other kids on the stage. So that was really great. Then I was not in anything for another 50 years, practically, something like that. But
if your ears are erect for more than 4 hours, please consult your local veterinarian.
You had to go there. I was trying to be nice. No, you had to go
there. Family friendly.
Yes.
I'm just giving medical advice. I'm just giving medical advice.
And then when I came here, we started doing Doctor Who plays at these little small conventions, and eventually we got invited to go to Dragon Con and perform, and that was the Mighty Rassilon Art Players, and I played the fourth Doctor because back then I looked a lot like Tom Baker, and I think I do still, except he's 20 years older than me or something like that. He's pretty old now, but I still look like him a lot. And I also was very tall, and I had a 25-foot scarf and just like all that other stuff. And then I started working with the Atlanta Radio Theater Company because Thomas Fuller, who founded it, started bringing in the better actors and tech people from the Mighty Rassilon Art Players, and we started doing a lot more high-tech stuff with the Atlanta Radio Theater Company because I was a computer programmer. I knew enough about electronics. We started putting all these things together, and we started increasing the ability to hear us at Dragon Con and do all these other things. And if anyone has seen the performances over the years, we're getting technologically better and better, and hopefully, and we also have really good scripts too. So that's my way I got into theater.
And why do you stick with it?
Well, there's no money, but it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun, and I feel it's great. And now that I'm retired from actually working for a living, I can do a lot of these things. I've written some of the plays. I direct a lot of them, and we're very fortunate to have really good actors. Which reminds me, all of you can come and play with the Atlanta Radio Theater Company because we meet online nowadays until we actually have to perform at an actual convention. And we've also started being in the community, like we've gone to the Tucker Rec Center and performed there, and a few other places around town. We've been doing that for about 10 years now. We do have actual performances, not at conventions, but our stuff is so science fiction oriented and horror and all that. It's not, we don't get the same kind of audience.
All right. So speaking of audience, that actually is a nice little segue to our next. It's almost like you're professional, Bill.
I wish I were.
But that is our first question. And why is it going into the locals? Why is it important for community theater to exist? Why would, if someone were to ask you, well, why should I go to my local show? Which, it's a dumb question, but I'm sure it happens. When I could go to a big production, when I could go see a major thing, when I can go to the Fox Theater, for example, in Atlanta, or if I can go to an off-Broadway show, why is it that the community, the local theaters, the smaller theaters, why is it important? Why should they be there and be supported?
Accessibility.
Yeah.
Because it's so much cheaper than. I'm sorry. I just I talk a lot about accessibility in theater with the different groups I work with, and you're paying $25 or $30 for a ticket to a really great production that may not have the giant budget, or you can drop $100 or more for nosebleed seats in a Broadway show, and you don't get a lot of you're not going to get a lot of kids. Like, I can't afford to take my kids to Broadway. I have a lot of kids. I have 4 kids. I can't afford to take them anywhere, really. So them being able to experience all these different, because I do a lot of weird shows too. So they've seen the book musicals, but then they've also seen these crazy, avant-garde pieces, and it just gives them such a better balance as young people coming up. And it was a whole lot cheaper in the long run.
And Ellery, you looked very excited at the question. What's your answer?
So, as someone who has been involved in theater on every level up to off-Broadway, I was not on stage for that, but I was a sound designer for 2 shows off-Broadway. And I've worked with professionals doing tech stuff for them, working behind the scenes. I've done paid gigs as a performer. I always go back to the community theater. As much as I love the money, I will never say no to money. I don't. You've even heard it year after year after year at the Tony Awards, where they're talking about almost every single person who is nominated for a Tony, wins a Tony, is a presenter. They got their start in community theater. They got their start in either their school productions or the local community theater productions or things like that. I know when I was growing up, we had even our library would work with a couple of other libraries in the area to put on really, really minimal budget productions where if they knew that you were good at things, you would end up wearing about 7 hats. And I was usually one person who was wearing 7 hats and being in the show. It also allows a lot of people who, I have always been low income. I came from a really poor family, and I was able to get a job as a stagehand because I had years of experience that I got from community theater. and from other community related activities related to the arts, where professionals would come in and would work with us because they either used to do it, can't do it anymore, and still want to pass on the craft, or they just like passing things on to the community. And it's amazing how someone who does this for a living, knows the skills, giving you even 5 minutes can completely change your trajectory and can completely change your life. It did it for me. I've seen what doing it has done to kids in the DC area, which is where I am now, when I've worked with them for things. And on top of it, it allows so many opportunities to individuals who, while Broadway and off-Broadway are getting better, they still are not there yet with accepting people that don't have the look or don't have whatever sound is in right now. I've gone to Broadway auditions where I have had the casting director come out afterwards and flat out tell me, your audition was amazing. We will get fired if we call you back. I'm so sorry. Because you're too ethnic looking for the white parts. You're too white for any ethnic part, and you're big. And now on top of it, I'm trans, I'm out as trans. And they're like, okay, so now we definitely don't know what to do with you because you're too short to play the male parts, but you're not the right build for any of the female parts. We don't know what we can do with you. Whereas community theater gives you all of these opportunities. They give opportunities to people who have disabilities, mobility, and stuff like that. And while you are seeing things like that on Broadway and off-Broadway, it's so far behind. So much of that started from community theaters, and then these professional organizations saw how much the communities and the paying people wanted these things and went, maybe we're going about this wrong and we should start doing it. But they're still being very cautious. And a lot of people who are amazingly talented would not, and I would have a very hard time getting opportunities in professional settings that they can get otherwise.
Yeah, sadly, we see that a lot, in especially like you said with the bigger shows. It's like in Hollywood in movies. It's the whole, well, we want to hit the widest audience possible, so we're going to be very timid and play it very safe, and we're not going to cast anything risky. Never mind the fact that almost every time they do, it hits it out of the park, and everybody goes, "Yay!" But the people with the money get very, very nervous. And as we know, in community theater, there's no money, so why be nervous?
Yeah,
Exactly.
All right. Your thoughts on that, Christy, if you have any?
Well, I mean, I've done, you can call it avant-garde, you can call it guerrilla theater, is kind of how I've always approached it. We did The Tempest as a steampunk show. We had a local Shakespeare group that we were doing all kinds of shows. We did, oh God, Kiss Me Kate, Taming of the Shrew. We did that in an outdoor amphitheater right by the river. We did it as a 1950s Italy. During the pandemic, we did a production of Twelfth Night online over Zoom with an entirely queer cast. You're not going to get many Twelfth Night that has very, very, trying to think of how to put this, very flamboyant actors playing these very serious roles, but making them absolutely hilarious with the way they're playing them. That's not something you're going to see at your Fox, where their biggest draw is the Nutcracker every year.
Right.
And to me, that you're able to take a lot more risks. You're able to do a lot more when it's not really about the money. It's more about the art form. We did an improv show where I was the only Caucasian person in the cast. And part of it was they had me and a Black woman sit down and write things that I would never say, or like I would say, but she wouldn't. And it was absolutely hilarious, but you're not going to see that short of something like Whose Line.
Right.
So for me, community theater is just somewhere you can do a lot more experimenting without having to worry about the bottom line.
Oh yeah, I've got in mind. I want to write an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, but he works at Buc-ee's and she works at Quick Trip.
I'm down for that.
There's a market for that for sure.
Oh yeah.
I'll tell you about our one in a few minutes.
Okay. Well, Bill, what is important for you, especially since you've been online for a while with the Atlanta Radio Theater Company?
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yes. Okay. So we are different, as many of you know. And oh, by the way, before we go too far, we did have the requisite thing for a online meeting, which is, of course, a cat butt. Thank you very much, Hillary, to provide
I'm
that.
sorry.
Otherwise, we would not be able to show this. It has to have that. It's required. Okay. So our community is different than everybody else's community. Our community is basically fandom. To a large degree, like 90% of it. We have a few people. We actually go and perform at libraries, like you said, and we get people in that have never heard this kind of stuff before. And it's really, really great. And we monetize ourselves by selling. We basically perform for free almost everywhere. When we perform at an actual theater, we have like a $10, $15 thing. We get half of that and the theater takes the other, but we sell our stuff. So we actually are like a video production, except it's audio and a lot cheaper. So we're very different that way. Our community is where we go to them instead of having them come to us most of the time. And we go to all these conventions. We've been as far north as Boston and as far west as Kansas City, Missouri, and down to Florida. We've performed at Worldcons in all those places and things like that. So we've actually go around, and we go around Atlanta and in various conventions. We'll be doing 221B Con coming up. We do a Sherlock play every year for them, and we also usually throw in some Woodhouse and do some adaptations, or sometimes write our own brand new Woodhouse stories. So we do that, and it's very different. And people seem to be very happy about getting that done. And I hope that we can have more people. And I would like a video group. Then with the old-fashioned Mighty Barcelona art players, I can't say it as fast as I used to. We did a Shakespeare play that Shakespeare should have written called Romeo and Ethel, the Pirate's Daughter. You guys may remember the title because that was a shtick in Shakespeare in Love. Or what was it called? What was the? I forget the name of the movie we stole it from. And what we had a chorus. So all the pirates were women pretending to be men. All the sailors were gay. The captains were played by the same actor who had he would go off stage and come back on. And we had a lot of fun doing that. And we had songs that were brand new and I think pretty damn good, because I didn't write anything but the lyrics. And we did that at Dragon Con twice. And our second time we had expanded it out. It was a 2.5-hour play at Dragon Con. We're probably not going to do that again. It's really a lot of work, let me tell you. But we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, cool.
I'm curious if you guys are the evil individuals that made me Mike Tribbles at Aresia.
No, we didn't do any of the triple stuff. Eurasia, that's in what, Baltimore or Boston or something like that.
Boston.
That's in Boston, and I'm eternally traumatized from having to Mike Tribbles for a radio play they did live.
Oh, we didn't do that. We didn't do that. No. But we might get, we bring our own mics. If anyone who's worked at Dragon Con there, we show up, we take over the stage, we bring all of our own audio equipment, use their mixer just to send it back to their amplifiers. So
Bless you.
we have a shtick, and we do this at all the conventions. you know, and we want to run the mixing board because that's what we practiced with.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
And
Yeah.
mostly it works. I mean, there are times when things fail because that's the way live theater is. You know, if suddenly something dies, you know, you fix it. I actually had something. I had a. We use a. Has anybody here heard of Sound Cue system?
Mhm.
Mm.
It's a great thing. I use it, especially since we do a lot of recorded effects and a lot of Foley effects, and it's all audio. Is I had it. There was a bug in it. I found the bug, emailed off to the guy in Australia who's the producer, creator of it. And I said, we discovered this bug during a live performance. And I said, and we're going to be performing again on Sunday. In that one day, he corrected it, emailed it back to me. Working with the professionals, it's wonderful, especially being a software geek like me. So I thought, so that's community.
Yes. Yeah, and the other one that I think that we all touched on that for me is the most important, though, is that accessibility. Accessibility is huge because the only reason I got into theater and enjoying theater is getting to see theater, which was, you know, for me, my first taste of it was, I've mentioned this in the previous one of these that we did, was third grade, doing a little live show, and then in high school going to see the drama club do a performance and going, that I want to do that. That's something I want to do. And then being taken as
I
part of
want
the
to do
drama.
that. Yeah, I've seen that movie. I've seen that play.
Oh yeah, and
that I can do.
Yeah, and being my drama club being taken to a local college and seeing a play there, and that locking it in of like, oh, this is something I really enjoy. This is something I want to do, and you know, and not everybody has, not to name drop, but I'm gonna name drop. You know, not everybody has Disney Plus to watch Hamilton.
Yeah.
You know, it's, you're not gonna have, and Greg, you mentioned this as well, the finances to see a professional level play. And so that is another vital reason.
Yeah.
My cousin was an original Jersey Boy, and I never saw that on Broadway because I couldn't afford to go.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, just going to Broadway, just going to New York. I mean, and in the last 3 years, I mean, it's doubled and triple price just to get to the city to see Broadway, let alone go see a play or a musical.
They're still, and I can confirm this from the stagehands. I am involved with the stagehands union, and they are still trying to recoup all of the costs that were lost during COVID, and trying to make up lost income for everyone while making sure they're making enough money to keep the theaters open.
Yeah.
And
not be shut down by the theaters because they're not making money.
And the theaters are trying so hard to work back because they know the whole situation. And everyone keeps going, well, why is it so expensive on Broadway? And it's like, because the people are doing this. This is literally when they're working that's all they can do.
Yep.
When you're on a run for a show, you don't have time for anything else. So you're paying the salaries for however many people that are in that show on the cast, the crew, and the extra production team behind the scenes. And the bigger and more fabulous the show is, the more people that are needed that you don't even realize. Hamilton has one of the largest stage crews because of how many set pieces and costumes and all of this and everything. They have to even fly stuff in because there's not enough room on the floor backstage for everything.
I have just you talking about this. There should be a rise of a lot more local theater with brand new shows and all that, because New York is pricing itself out of, I mean, not because they wanted to, but because of the new being in New York.
Yeah.
So the rest of the country can start making brand new plays that they hope go to New York, but actually start being more creative. And I just thought of that while you were talking.
See them at the Fringe festivals in the community. I mean, Atlanta Fringe Festival literally just opened their applications again for theirs. I mean, it's and one of the organizers of the Atlanta Fringe Festival is a member of our community, and she just posted it. So if you don't know, I mean, it was either a day or two ago.
Yeah.
Go check out her post. She's a really nice gal. I've talked to her several times.
Yeah, I got the email,
And
I think we've done at least a few shows for the Fringe.
yeah,
It's something
and
we're seeing in. Sorry.
Sorry.
no, okay, go ahead, Christy.
And also, I don't know what your take is on this, especially you, Ellery. Is that one of the reasons the pricing is getting so high? One of the reasons we're all being priced out is those third-party sellers, those scammers that are grabbing up all the tickets. I'm not even going to say what we had to pay to go for nosebleed seats at the Fox to see Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably, I think it was less than what our friends paid to see anything when they were in New York. No, it was more. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to say.
It's more expensive to see them here too. For me, it's just it's insane. It's insane.
Yeah.
A lot of companies are trying different things to stop those scammers, because it is becoming such a big issue, and then it's reflecting back on all of the theaters, even not like the Broadway, but like I work at Ford's Theater right now. We're having issues with. We literally had to set up a policy where everyone had to come to the box office to get their tickets. And if they picked them up ahead of time, we had to put a note in and tell them we could not guarantee we could reprint them, because we were having so many issues with scammers who were like taking the tickets and then making duplicates and doing things like that. And they still found ways around it by going, okay, we'll buy the cheapest tickets possible and then sell them to you for 10 times the cost.
So that's the scammers, but there's also the scalpers.
Yep.
So which are different
issues, but two
yeah.
types of same.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Sarah, you had something on that?
Well, I mean, I guess my thing is I still going back, I guess, to the question on why you should see community theater. For me, and it kind of goes back to what Elle said, you can have those hard discussions and hard topics and things like that, but you can also do the weird and different things. And like in college, I literally did a theater where my whole thing, I did a monologue on a woman who had been date raped. And that's just not something you're going to see in a lot of these big productions, especially things that are going to be touring. They just, every once in a while you get the vagina monologues and stuff like that out there. But those are not common, and those start discussions. And then you have the weird. I mean, again, in college, we did one of the ones where we didn't have it on an actual theater, an adaptation of The Two Gentlemen of Verona from Shakespeare, but we completely changed it, to modern times. And I actually played Crab, which if you don't know who Crab is, he's a dog. Okay. And I just scene stealer was essentially my role. And and those are the kind of things though that like I think it's important for community to see and to support, because those are what creates the discussion points to real life. And that's why I find community theater is so important. It's also very inspiring. As a kid who grew up watching a very small theater that was converted from a movie theater from the 1950s, put on productions where they literally brought us kids up on stage. I could have said that was my first introduction in community theater, because I was one of those kids brought up on stage who got to act and this exposed me to the love of being in front of people. It created confidence. It created part of myself. And that's why I think community theater should be embraced. So that's it.
Okay. Well, unless anyone else has a point they want to make on that one, we'll move on to our next point, which is nobody. Nobody. Okay, good. So we touched on a little about how community theater has changed in the last few years, especially thanks to the pandemic. Like my roommate used to be involved in a theater troupe in Tennessee, where they did during the pandemic to kind of help people out. They did a online production of my just brain fell out the diaries, where everybody basically comes on, does their monologue.
Oh,
My everybody throwing things at the screen. Feel free to send your hate mail to. But anyway, everybody did their own individual monologue. They compiled it all together and ran it over YouTube. And the local theater, the Dad's Garage, started doing on every Friday night. Yes, love Dad's Garage. They started.
Sorry, they give me work during the pandemic. I love them.
Yes, they're fantastic people. But they started every Friday night, showing, hey, here's ones we recorded, and doing a few live ones and keeping things going. Bill, I think you may have done a few things.
Well, when that hit, because we had a bunch of conventions lined up, and we started doing things like, okay, well, we can meet and rehearse with I forget which system we were on at the time. We're on Discord now, but we would invite people in, and then we would rehearse things, and then we figured out a way how to do this. Like, okay, all you have to do is get somewhere where you can control the sound, and you can use your phone to take a video of you. And we started recording, having people record. No one had to go to anybody's house. They could just shoot their own stuff. And then we would put it together. So we have several people who have now learned a lot of video editing as well as sound editing. And we've put a lot of things out on our YouTube channel. We did this when the World Science Fiction Convention was being held in New Zealand. And we got invited to go there virtually. And we had a Heinlein play, because we had 4 Heinlein plays that we have permission to do. And we performed one of those by this method. And while it was being shown, because we weren't doing it live, we had to edit it because that's the way it was working. And I could chat with the people, and then I got invited to the backstage area where these people who run the convention and also were Heinlein fans had invited the people who made Predestination, which was an adaptation of Heinlein's All You Zombies. And I can't remember the names of the people. They're New Zealand filmmakers who've become very famous in America, so that I can't remember them. And we had done an adaptation of it for audio as a 30-minute play, and they had made an 1.5-hour movie, so they had to stretch it out. We actually got to talk about that in the anteroom with all the fans all happening around. It was pretty impressive, and we've still done a lot of that. We now are trying to still go to conventions, but we put them up on YouTube after we've done them, and so everybody can see them. And I think this has helped us a lot, and you don't have to be just a radio theater to do that. You can start recording your stuff if you can perform at conventions, or even, in community theaters, around the city. You can then put them up on YouTube and try to monetize them some. Now, admittedly, you have to own the rights to do that, which means you can do Shakespeare and Wilde and some of those people, or things you've written yourself, which is what I want to recommend to all of you: is get writers, start making new drama, new comedy. I mean, I love Shakespeare. He's great. No one will top him. I will say that, but he's dead. And there's new things to be done. And write your own, please. And then give it to me because we will produce it.
Spoon River Anthology, by the way, I remembered that was what they did.
Finally, yes, I remember.
Yes.
I read that in high school or something.
Yeah. Greg, how about for you? How has community theater changed in the last few years in your point of view?
Well, I mean, I will be honest, 2019 was probably my most fulfilling year as an artist. I had directed Lizzie the Musical in a warehouse basement in Baltimore. My band was gigging. I felt amazing. And then the pandemic, I was actually directing Reefer Madness when the pandemic took Reefer Madness off my plate, forced it off my plate. And I kicked those rights literally for 3 years. I just had to relinquish them because we couldn't find the venue we were using closed. And the biggest thing I noticed was the venues, like the group that I was working with at that time. We were a guerrilla theater group. We were called Guerrilla Theater Front, actually, and we threw hair in my backyard because we had a big backyard. We did that in this warehouse basement. We did all of these, we did The Odd Couple in a row home in Highlandtown. So we didn't really have a space. So it was actually easier for us to maintain because we didn't have to pay rent and we didn't have to pay bills and we didn't have to pay an artistic director or anything like that. We just like, okay, we'll just keep signing off the rights. We'll keep kicking Concord down the road until we can find a space. And I saw a lot of theaters that, obviously really struggled. They tried to do the virtual thing. They just because again, a lot of times those established venues are being run by people that technology isn't why they got into it. They got into theater. They didn't want to do this type of thing. But that's the biggest thing I saw happening with that. But I did see a lot of really inventive like online options happen. A lot of people did like the Zoom Shakespeare thing, but a friend of mine, the guy who actually did projections for my production of Lizzie, is like this computer genius kid. I don't know, he's some sort of savant, and he wrote this program where he did this thing, which was like a Shattered Space was the name. He wrote this original piece, and he got all of these actors from all over the world to be a part of it, and it was like a choose your own adventure show. So everybody was in different aspects of outer space, and you would choose where you went, and they would do their bit, they would do their scene, and they had all of these like the sets in their home and everything like that. And but the program was really intense, and it was getting a lot of I think he actually offers it for free. So I'll double check with Yuli on that. I'll drop that into a chat with anybody who wants it because he's a good friend. But to the point where they would be like Neil Patrick Harris was in one because he heard good buzz on it, and they were it said NPH, and the my friends were in it, and they were like, that's not Neil Patrick Harris, and he turned his camera on for 3 seconds, waved, and then turned it back off, and and it was like what, and it was it was cool, but that was getting a lot of, and so seeing people like that really step to the front, and now as we're going back into the before times, it's everybody's struggling. People that were doing 8 shows a season are doing 4 shows a season now because they can't afford to do 8. Like Guerrilla Theater Front, we disbanded because we just couldn't, we couldn't get the funds together to keep it going. Like stuff like that. I saw a lot of places that tried to keep it going that just couldn't. And a lot of places that struggled and now have taken their seasons and have done more just to keep the doors open while they're getting their feet back under them. But the other thing I keep seeing, though, is that a lot of places are embracing new work in an effort to get stuff that isn't super expensive rights-wise. Because, the book musicals, those old standards, they cost that cheddar cheese is not that ain't light. Reefer Madness, hell, for one weekend for Reefer Madness, it was like $2,700 for the rights. Yeah, for one weekend for 4 shows. We were just doing 4 shows, and but I'm seeing a lot of places that are going. They're not just hitting Shakespeare. They're getting a lot of new works. They're writing their own stuff. They're doing a really, it's fun because you're seeing these people have to think outside the box, and I mean, I'm excited to see what they're bringing. I always get like that theater that never would have ever taken that risk is now taking a risk, and I'm hyped about that always. So I always like it when people get a little weird on stage. It's always more fun.
Yeah, that's kind of what you have to do. It's the only way you're going to see the really weird stuff or cool stuff that you want to see is do it yourself.
Yeah, I want to jump in just quickly. It's one of the things that I learned. I went to Scotland and I went to the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, and they did plays everywhere. I'm talking about at hardware stores and things like that. We, not necessarily me, but all of the theater people need to start going to really cheap venues where people will, oh, you might bring a few people into this bar. Yes, do a play there. It doesn't have to be 2.5 hours long and 5 acts. No, but you can start, especially for community theater, start building your community by going around. Just like singers will go to a lot of local places and perform effectively for free, or part of the take, or who puts the money in at the tip jar or something like that. Yes, you have to be extremely creative, especially when you're not in New York, and people are desperate for drama, and they will love live drama. I love television and movies, but it's different when they're right in front of you. And if you're in one of these little tiny venues, you're really, really right in front of them. And that's what needs to be starting at a grassroots level.
Well, and one of the other things I'm seeing a lot of too is that, like, here in Baltimore, I can't speak for everywhere, but the Baltimore City Arts Council there's tons of buildings that are just sitting empty. And so they're like, come see us, and you can go do your show here for however many weeks. Like, I just went and saw an original production from the Baltimore Rock Opera Society. Bros is what they go by. They write all their own stuff. They're great. They do really cool stuff. But it was in like an old bank. And it was like, literally, they're like, do you got a space? And like, we have a bank. And they're like, we'll do it in a bank. And they didn't pay for any, like, they didn't have to pay rent. They didn't have to pay for the space. They didn't have to pay for rights because they wrote the stuff. So everything that they did was money back in the jar to help them do anything they want to do down the road, which is ultimately the goal. Like Terry Pratchett said, theater is what you put money into and get art out of,
And Ellery, you were going to say, yeah.
So I have a couple of thoughts on this. One of them based off of what Bill had said, while I do agree that like theater communities as a whole need to be more open to performing in like unusual spaces and like getting creative with it. I like chuckled in my head at this because I'm very active with they're called gala choruses. They're gay and lesbian. So queer choruses. And most of these queer choruses, because theater brings in the queers, we put on performances of some kind. And it's been something that, like, because the queer community for so long didn't have places to go, and even now it's hard to find safe. It's becoming hard again to find safe places to congregate if you're queer individuals. That's just been a through line in the queer history of queer organizations finding weird places, not always the safest, not always the healthiest. It's gotten better over time, but like to put on these shows so that they could be authentically themselves, even if they couldn't out in the real world, and so that they could tell whatever messages they felt needed to be told at that time. And even now, like in DC, one of the big ones is to perform in a lot of different like bars and clubs and stuff like that, where it'll be like small performances, things like that. But like I've performed in lots of odd places, and I had done it earlier in my life, but it's like very common nature when you're very active in the queer community. And most of 99% of the time people will come, and they're more likely to come recently if it's not a bar, just because they're like, well, if I'm going to a bar, I'm going to end up drinking a lot. That's going to get too expensive. And then that's just all my money for the week. Whereas if it's somewhere where like alcohol's not as readily available, whether or not it's there for the event, we tend to have better turnouts at these like less obvious places, because people are going, well, it doesn't cost that much for us to come, and we're not, losing all of our paycheck for the week to alcohol, which makes me sound awful.
And I don't want to bring competition for myself, but you guys can start performing at local conventions. And I mean, since we're not doing stage shows anymore, we're doing radio shows. I think people want to be entertained, and they'd like to see a stage show.
They always do well at conventions. I've worked a lot of them at conventions, and they always bring in a huge crowd.
Any bookstore or coffee shop that has a live mic.
Back when the Harry Potter things were coming out once a year, we did readings from Harry Potter at local libraries and local bookstores, And so we were very, adaptable to it. And we didn't, no money was exchanged until people bought like our CDs and things. Now MP3s.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
The other two things that I had thought about related to this question that are both good changes that I've seen, and massively good changes, and actually started at like community theater level and then have slowly been seeping their way up the ladder. Which everyone's like, I'm like, no, that doesn't. Okay, stop showing us your butt.
No, it has to be quiet.
No. Trust me, we'll get views.
So one thing is safety has improved drastically. What a lot of people don't know and don't realize, OSHA has literally a separate set of guidelines for theaters and film stages than they do for, and like performance venues, than they do for everyone else, because the owners of these companies, everything went, well, we understand why you want this safety measure, but this wouldn't be feasible for us to do, and justified it and got grandfathered in all these rules where like there's literally a separate set of safety guidelines. And community theaters, because they're like, well, a lot of our actors are coming here for fun. If something happens, we could end up in, like, depending on who it is, we could end up in trouble. They could end up in trouble. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. Safety has become so important. I'm seeing more and more of them trying to have like a safety plan from the get-go when they're bringing in cast and crew and anyone who's going to help out with the production, like having the ability for them to like say if there's a food allergy, a medical concern, something like that could come up during the run of the show, in such a way where it's like not going to be made public to the cast and crew, but so that like the stage manager and the director know if something happens, this is unusual, we need to call 911. This is completely normal, just give them 5 minutes. And also like not having, I have a peanut allergy. Making sure that there's no cross-contamination in the space. Like, okay, what level of your peanut allergy is it? Can we have it in the space at all? Or things like that. Making sure people know where the first aid kits are and the fire extinguishers are, and making sure that they're up to date and usable, which has been a huge issue in the past at every level, to the point where I've had more than once where we were bandaging up an injury that happened because of a broken set piece, things like that, or whatever, with like paper towels, gaff tape, and a prayer because the first aid kit was literally empty and no one knew because no one had checked it. Now everyone's like, we should be taking responsibility. Like, if we're not taking the safety precautions at the beginning of this, we're putting people at high risk. And also embracing glow tape and things like that, where they kept, oh, this is going to, take people out of the show. And people finally went, well,
so does a broken leg.
Yeah, screw that. We're just going to use it. And if they don't like it, they can deal with it. And nobody noticed. It didn't change. But there was such this mindset of it that everyone was anti it and would minimize using it. And it would cause so many safety problems. So seeing a huge change in that, to the point where equity actors, members of IATSE, things like that, are taking like examples of what they've been seeing happen at community theaters and stuff like that, and taking them back to the unions and going, this is something that obviously can be done. If this theater that has a shoestring budget or no budget can make this work and make it safe, why are we putting our own people at such extreme risks for all this money? Like, I understand money's up there, but like, you have to put safety first. And like, the unions then are able to use this to fight for changes and stuff like that. And it's slow, but that literally started with community theaters going, safety is important. We need to stop putting that as the last thing to worry about, because it'll cost us money, because it ends up hurting us more in the long run. And it's going up the food chain. Also, projections started out, they have been used for a long time, a little bit in professional, but they were used a lot more by community theaters for the longest time. When they started getting used by more semi-professional and professional at first.
What does that mean in this context? Projections.
Using like projections either like within the show.
like film
project-
projections on the back of the
Oh,
wall
okay. Like,
in
yeah,
lieu of like a drop or something.
That's-
Like
Yeah, and
that's
there's
great.
I've slowly been seeing more and more of that being used in semi-professional and professional settings, but then on top of it, they would go, well, we don't know what to call projections. We're just going to put it in with set design. And so then the credit for the person who designed and programmed the projection, they would just get listed as part of the standard crew. They would not get listed as part of credit. And then if there was an award given, they were not eligible for the award. The award would go to the designer. That's finally starting to change. And you're starting to see at like semi-professional, professional levels, projectionist, so-and-so. So they're actually getting credit so that they can actually put it on their resume. I'm someone who was at the tail end before that started to change professionally, who didn't get credit because it went to the, but community theaters have always been big about trying to make sure everyone got credit for the work they did. And seeing that credit in semi-professional and professional places and awards start to be given where the projectionist is included is because of community theaters making that extra step in the first place.
See, I would call that like virtual set design. And maybe that will sound better.
Yeah, they don't have a good name for it yet. The name at the moment is projectionist. And I'm like, as someone who's done that, that's not what a projectionist does. It's a lot more than that.
Yeah. Christy, did you have any thoughts on it? No, it's fine.
No, it just took me back to doing Midsummer Night's Dream when the king forgot his lines and the queen turns to him and says, "Dost thou have anything to say?" And he says, "Nope." Live theater, y'all. Honestly, I'm just enjoying listening to everybody else's stories.
Yeah. We did have more points to cover, but we are kind of running up on time. So what we'll do is we're going to put a pin in this and we will all regather to continue this discussion because there is, as we've seen, we've gone the full hour and we're only about halfway through the topics we wanted to cover because gosh, theater people talking. No.
Chatty.
Yes, indeed. So what I'm going to wrap up with for now until we reconvene is first, I would like to say thank you to all of you for coming. I greatly appreciate it. And we'll go around with what is one quick brief story of something that you had happen to you at live or community, not live, it's live. Something you had at a community theater level that you don't think you would have experienced anywhere else, either behind the stage, on the stage, near the stage. We'll start with Bill.
Okay, I actually have a great one that happened several years ago. We were performing at a Worldcon in Orlando, and we had a bit where there were thousands of bats coming out to attack our hero. And the Foley people had some papers that they were making it in front of flapping the papers in front of the microphones. Well, we had given playbills, which were just one sheet of paper folded over, and the entire audience starts flapping with it. And the Foley person would go, more, and they followed it. So they actually understood the fucking play. I was like, oh my God, the magic of radio. We had our own Foley team in the audience. And we've done that in other things where the audience will help us along. We did in RAP, we did a stage show where we were doing a parody of the 1966 Batman, and they were supposed to walk up the wall. All of you have seen that in the Batman TV show. So since it was a Doctor Who crossover too, they used my 40-foot scarf and they threw it, and they're walking up the building. And what the audience did was this. And it was like, oh my God, imagination. That's wonderful. I'm sorry. I had to give those two.
Oh, that's great. Christy.
Sorry. When I was actually a senior in high school and doing our winter community show. We were doing Peter Pan. I played Nana the dog. Yeah, I was also a dancing fish and animal. I had a lot of hats in this show, but I had a full dog costume. Think like mascot costume, and I also had a big collar that went around my head. Well, I'm on my hands and knees, being led around the stage on a leash by the maid, and she pulled too hard. And the collar caused my head to pop off during a performance. So I'm under there. Luckily, I have my contacts in, otherwise I would have been completely blind. I've had my fish makeup. I'm just like, what? WTF? What is going on? Every kid that's in the orchestra is standing on their seats. The music has stopped. They are dead. The audience is dead. I wish the maid had been mic'd, because she turned around and the line was she grabbed my head, put it back on me, and the line was supposed to be, "Don't disturb the master. You know how the master gets." She says, "Don't disturb the master. Your head will really come off."
Oh, Sarah, do you have one?
Oh, I'm going way back on this. It's not so much theater as performance related, but we're gonna count it. I was probably 4 years old, and my mom has this on VHS tape. I was on my ballet recital, which was in this big fancy theater and stuff like that, and I was dressed up as a pearl. Okay, I even had like a pearl cap and the tutu and the whole 9 yards. So we do our little performance. We go take a bow. I go right to the middle of the stage and go, "Mama, are you out there?" The whole audience starts laughing. "Don't you laugh at me." Go back, take my bow, go back to my place.
That's precious.
So yeah, that's my little like memorable moment. Still sticks with me.
Like W.C. Fields said, don't work with kids or animals.
What if the kid is the animal?
That was Christy's story.
That's also mine.
And remember, there's no such thing as the real world, because all the world is a stage.
Greg.
Okay, so in 2014, I directed the stage production of Rocky Horror. In a basement theater in Baltimore, the Spotlighters Theater. Okay, and I've been doing Rocky since I was 13, so like I've got shadow casting. I've got a lot of love for the piece. I met my wife there. I met my oldest daughter there. Like all of the stuff. So we're doing the run, and I was like the MC. I walked around with a little top hat that had like a rib cage on it, and my stage name was Vaz Deference, because it's Rocky Horror. And and as I was walking around, I see this crowd walk in. Like we get groups sometimes, and this crowd walks in, and they're all a group of older people that don't typically come to Rocky, and they're wearing their church best and big hats. And I walk over to them as we're doing all of the pre-show game stuff that you do. And I was like, "Hey, what's going on? How are you guys doing?" And they're like, "We're fine." I was like, "Are you guys from a particular place?" And they were from some Southern Baptist church in North Carolina, and they were on a bus trip up to see Broadway shows or something. I don't know. They gave me the gist of it. And so I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, like this is like try to give them a little like, have you ever seen it?" I'm asking the questions, like, because like we were going all out. And so like callbacks, everything's happening like that because it's Rocky. And then Act 2, they were gone. Like they had left at intermission. I was like, it's probably for the best. Like, let's be fair. Like they're probably like, hopefully they're off drinking at one of the bars. But they weren't. Because the general manager comes in and taps me on the shoulder and says, "Come here." And so I sneak out the side because I'm in the audience yelling terrible things. And I go down the hall, and they're all sitting on the floor in the lobby, holding hands, praying for our immortal souls. And I'm like, "What's happening?" He was like, "I heard voices and came out of my office." And they're like they know your name, and and I'm like, what is and like full on 20 minutes of just prayer, so that, and for my kids as well, because I told them I had kids. They were like, that those poor children with that father of theirs, and I was like, I don't think anything I ever do in theater is ever going to top this moment. I've offended the church, and there we are.
Richard O'Brien would be proud.
Yes.
And he was.
I think we all have Rocky Horror stories somewhere.
Oh, there's always
Oh, yeah.
1 or 20.
Mhm. And bring us home, Ellery.
So, 2 stories instantly came to mind. Both of them are very short. One of them was senior year of high school. We're doing The Drowsy Chaperone, and I got cast as Trix the Aviatrix, who, for anyone that doesn't know, that is the Deus Ex Machina of the show, is literally the person that comes in, makes everything better, and then literally flies away. So I had a plane. Two things with this show that were amusing was my high school would seem to allow anything to go. There's one line at the very beginning where they're introducing everyone. When they get to Trix, they go, yeah, she's an aviatrix, but we would call today a lesbian. And since I was cast in it, I was the president of the Gay Straight Alliance. I was not out to my parents, but was out at school as queer. I had a girlfriend I was very public about at high school. I was like, I love this. This is hysterical. Can I, like, I don't care if I have to say it. Please let this stay in. And our board of directors went, we don't think that's an appropriate thing for us to keep in the show because it might offend people. But they kept the entire monologue talking about porn. All of the like racist jokes and all of that. The one thing they took out of the entire thing was the lesbian line that at the time, as far as anyone knew, lesbian wanted to keep in. That would have insulted me. And then the propeller from that, we did not have the ability. Mika, what are you doing in my bag? Cat is in bag. I will deal with that in a minute. We had a propeller that we had to move manually because they were like, we can't figure out how to do this on a budget. Everything that could go wrong with it went wrong. We get to the end of it, and to keep this thing spinning, you had to just keep turning the dowel manually to get it to go anywhere. So the show ends, and I'm like, my wrists are killing me. I don't know what I did, all of this, and it wouldn't stop hurting. I finally had to go to the emergency room because I could not open my hand because there had been so many rehearsals with this that I had caused severe tendonitis in both of my hands.
God.
But we go there, and my hands are stuck like this. So they're looking at me and going, so what were you doing? I'm like, spinning a wooden dowel attached to a propeller. And they're like, no, what were you really doing? Theater. Would not believe me. And I mean, like, my parent is there, like, telling them, they're telling the truth. Go through the whole thing and could not live that down. Animal story was I was the back end of a singing cow in a production of musical version of Jack and the Beanstalk. Anyone who was a named character had to go and say hi to the children afterwards. The cow was a named character, so both halves of the cow had to go out and say hi to the children. I had a feud going on with Jack because we were in high school. I was high school, he was middle school. We kept hiding things from each other, and he decided to take this to a new extreme after I hit his pants. But he then turned around, and because he's guiding the cow around, and everyone's like, we want to go say hi to the cow. We want to pet the cow. And he says, you should pet the cow right here, and was teaching them that the way that this particular cow liked to be petted was to get repeatedly smacked on the rear end because he knew that would be me, and there was nothing I could do because I had to stay in character. So we're out there with these little kids who are going, so that's how you pet a cow, and I'm just underneath this trying not to laugh or curse him out.
Actors are evil.
There is no petty like theater petty.
Oh yeah.
Well, thank you so much again for everybody. We'll go around and where people can find you on the social medias if they want to get in touch with you or support your work or anything. And we'll start with Ellery. No, Ellery. There we go.
Okay. At the moment, most of my performances are with the Gay Men's Chorus of Washington, D.C., whose abbreviation is GMCW. I'm in their cabaret cast. I'm part of the chorus. We put on a lot of amazing shows that do have like full production value. We keep getting booked for more shows, so you could see me running around with that. And you hopefully in the next like month or two will hopefully see me involved with Second Star Productions, which is in Bowie, Maryland. And I'm also starting a side gig as part of a queer cabaret cast doing the bar circuit in DC. That's called Extra Queer Cabaret.
But queer people aren't
Facebook
extra.
is the only place you can find me.
Theater people are extra. What are you talking
No,
about?
we're not extra at all. What are you talking about?
We're extraordinary.
That's right. Christy.
Right now you can find me pretty much social media. Last name is Chalmers. Look up at Salem Stitch, a witch in a stitch. At pretty much any social media, you'll find me. I was active on TikTok for a little bit, and then COVID hit our house, and yeah, I haven't put anything new on there. I have a lot of ideas in my head. If anybody wants to collaborate on anything, please hit me up in my DMs. I need to perform something. Yeah,
we should talk. I can do things long distance, but that's about it.
And Bill, if someone is looking to perform something.
Yes. First of all, the Atlanta Radio Theater Company is always interested in more actors and tech people because we're a volunteer organization. And as you all know, there's no money in that. But anyway, you can find us on YouTube at Atlanta Radio Theater and a company. I think we have to put that in too. We're actually sell stuff on Amazon and Audible. So you can download our stuff there. We have podcasts. We have a daily podcast that's been going on for like 3 years now called Mercury, a broadcast of hope. And it takes place in a post-apocalyptic zombie hellhole, but it's uplifting because seriously, I mean, it's keeping the morale up, and it's pretty good. So we have that, and we will see you at 221 Con in Atlanta. I forget what month it's in. Coming up very soon. We are in fact actually going to be performing at the Jack Benny fan club convention, which is a virtual thing. We've been doing that for 3 years now, and we do not only recreations of his old radio show, we also write brand new versions of it. and so we are doing that, and we're casting that right now because we want celebrity impersonations for the people who did the Jack Benny stuff. So we're around. Look for us everywhere.
And Sarah, you and I can be found on the Facebook group.
Right. Facebook group is the best place to find me.
All right. And Greg.
I am on the Facebook as well. And on the Instagram as well. But the next place you'll see me is sitting in the dark playing the bass for Little Shop of Horrors at Stevenson University in April. And then May, I'm playing Jesus Christ Superstar with a children's theater, which knowing that theater, they're going to bring it because I've worked with those cats for 20 years now. But
I will find out about that one.
Yeah, it's definitely up Essex, Maryland is where that is, right up by my house now. Still running Bloody Mayhem Theatrical. That you can find Bloody Mayhem Theatrical on Instagram as well as on Facebook. We have a website, but don't go to the website. It hasn't. We haven't updated in a long time. But we will be doing a shadowcast of Clue, the movie, at the AFI Silver in Silver Spring, Maryland, on April 29th. And then we will be doing our annual showing of Rocky Horror in October with our biannual showing of Phantom of the Paradise Gary Mitchell, I know you like that show a lot.
Mm.
That's coming up next spring. So that's our big one that's there. That'll be the third time we've shadowed Phantom of the Paradise. So
Nice.
I
Yeah,
play
I love
Beef
that
when we
show.
do that. I play
Greg, I
Beef when we
gotta
do that.
ask, which Clue ending are you guys doing?
All three.
Yes.
All three. And I've got this whole crazy idea. Like when I originally blocked this in my head, it was for a much smaller space, and the AFI is like huge and pretty and gorgeous because it's the American Film Institute, and it's going to be just a giant cluster of amazing comedy. Like every person that's in this is hysterically funny. Like they're all like here on comedy, so it's going to be. My guy playing Wadsworth is my usual Frank, so he's going to be franking it up. So it's going to be a good time. It's going to be fun. And if you can make it up, if you're in Silver Spring, come see it. Go see anything at the AFI because they do amazing stuff there all the time. But they indulge my stupidity at least twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year. So
Yes.
Can I just say quickly, with
Sure.
Bill's repeated comments of like, if you want to write something, definitely do. A lot of people, it's intimidating. I know it's been intimidating for me in the past when I've written things. Like, 2 suggestions. 1, just like write something down, like go with the flow, and then edit it afterwards, or hand it off to someone else and go, well, this is a rough idea. What do you want to do with this? Or if you don't feel comfortable doing a completely original idea, start with a parody. Parodies are awesome, and they're completely legal, like 99% of the time. There's a lot of loopholes there, but almost all the time it is legal as long as the parody is like far enough from the original that it doesn't look like you're copying. And so many
use the same
people
music.
have gotten starts doing parodies.
Yeah.
Yes. Parody is your friend. It will
Yeah.
protect you. So, yes.
Sorry.
I sort of had something because we talked about Rocky Horror. There's this great book by a guy named Jasper Ford, 2 F's, and he did a bit where they go to theater to see Richard III. Richard III walks out, and before he can say anything, someone in the audience goes, "What time is it?" He goes, "Now is the winter of our great content."
That's great.
And from then on, it's Richard III as Rocky Horror.
I like that.
Okay,
and that's in a novel.
Okay, this is my assignment to all of our viewers at home. I want Richard the horror story. Richard the Richard horror story. Rocky
Rocky the Third.
Rocky the Third.
I need this in my life.
So,
I need this in my life too, since I have horror stories from both.
Yeah, start by reading the book. And feel that.
I believe that was the first Thursday Next novel that was.
Yes, it's the first.
Lost in a Good Book. Yeah.
Great
no,
story.
the Air Affair.
The Air Affair. You're right.
The Air
Yes.
Affair.
No, we're not nerds at all.
Out of her book. I saw you light up when I mentioned Richard III, and I went, they know where I'm going. We're geeks.
Oh, indeed. So if you enjoyed this and you want to see more, please remember to, again, comment, like, subscribe if you're watching on the YouTube. If you're watching on the Facebook, hit the like button. Please share this. Get the word out. The more views and support on this, the better, because I definitely want to do these panels live in person at a certain convention that I, again, will not name because I don't want to annoy anybody.
We'll annoy them for you.
Exactly. There we go. Yeah. You might have been once or twice.
How do you end something about the theater?
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
And we will be doing this again next month in February. Our topic is going to be jukebox musicals. And again, because we have more points on this topic, we will revisit this topic in the future with these lovely people if they can find the time. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you all for watching. Thank you all of our people coming on stage and talking. We could not do this without either. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your weekend.